Peyton Marsh buried her father on a Tuesday. By Thursday, she was a suspect in her own family. No warning, no build-up. Just her stepmother's eyes locking onto her across the lawyer's office, sharp as broken glass, right after the will was read. Here's what nobody expected. The girl everyone called the maid's daughter was about to own everything. The funeral home smelled like lilies and floor wax. Peyton sat in the back row, arms crossed, jaw tight. Her stepmother, Renata Voss, sat up front in black Chanel, dabbing dry eyes with a silk handkerchief. Her two sons, Bryce and Colton, flanked her like bodyguards in tailored suits. Nobody looked at Peyton. Nobody spoke to her. That was normal. Walter Marsh had married Renata when Peyton was 11. From day one, Renata made it clear, Peyton was tolerated, not loved. The boys got tutors, cars, trips to Aspen. Peyton got chores. She fed the horses. She mucked the barn. She learned to disappear. After the burial, the family gathered in the drawing room of the Marsh estate for the reading of the will. The lawyer, a nervous man named Mr. Dalton, shuffled his papers like they were on fire. "To my sons, Bryce and Colton," he read, "the estate, the vehicles, and the vineyard holdings." Renata's lips curled into a satisfied smile. "And to my daughter Peyton." Everyone leaned in. Even Peyton, despite herself, held her breath. The barn, and the 5 acres surrounding it. Silence. Then laughter. Ugly, sharp laughter. "The barn?" Colton snorted. "She gets a barn, and we get a company? Guess Dad really did think she belonged with the animals," Bryce muttered, not even bothering to whisper. Renata folded her hands like a queen accepting a gift. "It's fitting," she said. "He always said she had a wild spirit. Untamed." Peyton said nothing. She stood, chair legs scraping the marble floor, and walked out into the gray afternoon before anyone could see her face crack. She didn't cry until she reached her car. The barn sat at the edge of the property, sagging and forgotten. Rust streaked down its tin roof like old blood. Ivy had swallowed half the west wall. Nobody had touched it in years, not since her father used to bring her out here as a kid, teaching her to fix engines and count stars through the gaps in the roof. She parked in the mud and just sat there, engine ticking as it cooled. "He left me a barn." After everything, a barn. But something nagged at her. Her father wasn't careless. He was precise, deliberate. He didn't forget things, and he definitely didn't forget people. She stepped inside. Dust exploded upward in the slanted light, swirling like ghosts disturbed from sleep. The smell hit her. Old hay, rust, motor oil. Memory wrapped around her like a fist. "Nobody's touched you in years, have they?" she whispered to the empty room. She grabbed a broom leaning against the wall, cracked, but usable, and started sweeping. Hours passed. Sweat soaked through her shirt. Blisters rose on her palms. She laughed once, bitterly, at a beam covered in cobwebs. "Real subtle inheritance, Dad." Around noon, her hand brushed against carved letters on an old support beam, WM plus PM, her father's initials. Hers, carved when she was 9 years old. Beneath the carving, the wood looked disturbed, splintered, like something had been pried out and pushed back in a hurry. She pressed her palm against it. It gave slightly. She didn't push further, not yet. The crunch of tires on gravel outside made her freeze. Through a gap in the boards, she watched a black SUV pull up. Renata stepped out first, sunglasses on despite the overcast sky. Colton followed, hands in his pockets, surveying the land like a man pricing dirt. "She can have this dump," Colton said. "Dad probably felt sorry for her." "He was sentimental," Renata replied, voice cold and clipped. "He thought pity was some kind of virtue. It's pathetic." Peyton crouched behind a stack of hay bales, heart hammering, breath shallow. She didn't move until the SUV's engine faded down the road. When she stood again, something inside her had shifted. The humiliation from the will reading was hardening into something else. Something quieter, colder. She found an old rusted toolbox under the workbench. That's when she noticed it. A floorboard in the back corner, slightly raised, uneven. She pressed her boot against it. It shifted. A hollow sound echoed beneath. Kneeling, She pulled it up. Underneath, in a small hollowed-out space, sat a single brass key wrapped in oilcloth, and a note yellowed with age. Her father's handwriting, unmistakable, slanted, firm. Where the ground remembers, the truth waits for you. Her hands trembled. The ink didn't look decades old. It looked recent. Intentional. For the first time since the funeral, her grief felt different. Not empty. Alive. "Okay, Dad," she whispered. "What are you trying to tell me?" She couldn't sleep that night. The note burned behind her eyes. Where the ground remembers. By 2 a.m., she gave up trying. She grabbed a flashlight and her father's old canvas jacket from the coat hook and walked back across the wet field to the barn. Inside, the air felt colder than before. Her flashlight swept the floor, past the hay bales, past the workbench, past the spot where she'd found the key. Then she saw it, a hairline crack running through the concrete, hidden under a stack of old crates. She shoved the crates aside. The sound of scraping wood cracked through the silence like a gunshot. She knelt, pressed her palm to the concrete. It moved. A slab lifted like a trapdoor, releasing a breath of stale air, soil and iron. Narrow steps disappeared into the dark below. "Dad," she muttered, half afraid of what would answer. "What did you do?" She climbed down. The walls were packed dirt, braced with old wooden boards. Cobwebs clung to her hair. The stairs opened into a small underground room, barely wide enough for 2 people. Metal shelves lined the walls, sealed boxes, labeled in her father's handwriting. Harvest logs, 2011, company records. And in the corner, one box marked with a single word, Peyton. Her throat tightened. She wiped the dust off the lid and opened it. Inside, folders tied with twine, old photographs, documents stamped with a name, Marsh Holdings Group. The first page listed ownership, principal shareholder, Peyton Marsh. She sank onto a crate, papers shaking in her hands. Her father hadn't forgotten her. He'd hidden her, on purpose, to protect her. The next folder held letters, draft trust documents, meeting notes, and a small recording device. She pressed play, static. Then his voice, soft, familiar, cutting straight through 6 years of silence, like he was standing beside her. "If you're hearing this, it means I ran out of time. The company is yours, Peyton. I built it under your name years ago. Renata's been moving assets behind my back for months. This was the only way to keep it out of her hands. Trust the barn. It's always protected what mattered." Peyton pressed a hand to her mouth. Tears fell before she even realized she was crying. The recording continued, fainter now. "You were always the one with the heart, kid. I knew you'd find this when it mattered most." The tape clicked off. Silence swallowed the room. She sat there a long time, letting it sink in. Every insult at the will reading, every laugh, every guess she gets the hay, all of it, a smokescreen her father had built on purpose. He hadn't disinherited her. He'd protected her. By sunrise, her kitchen table was buried in documents, ownership transfers, notarized seals, her father's signature on every page. It still didn't feel real. Her phone buzzed, a text from Renata. "Don't embarrass yourself with your little barn. Estate lawyers meet at 10. Peyton smiled for the first time in days. "Oh, we'll meet," she murmured, sliding the papers into a worn leather folder. The downtown conference room was ice-cold with tension. Renata sat at the head of the polished table, Bryce and Colton on either side like statues. 2 attorneys flanked them, already smirking at Peyton like she didn't belong in the room. "Miss Marsh," the lead attorney said, "we understand you're contesting the will." "Not the will," Peyton said, setting her folder down. "The ownership." He blinked. "I'm sorry?" She opened the folder and laid the documents out one by one, stamped, sealed, dated. The lawyer's smirk died. "Incorporation certificates," he read slowly, naming Peyton Marsh as majority shareholder of Marsh Holdings. Renata's face drained of color. "This is absurd," she snapped. "These are forged." "They're not," Peyton said calmly. "Original notary stamps from Dad's legal team. Check the signatures yourself." Colton scoffed. "This means nothing. The estate's already—" "It means," Peyton cut in, voice quiet but iron solid, that the will you all laughed about was never the real picture. Marsh Holdings owns the estate, the cars, the vineyard, everything. You inherited titles, not control. Nobody spoke. The attorney excused himself, muttering about verification, and returned minutes later with a clerk from the county registrar holding a certified printout. Records confirm it, the clerk said. Miss Peyton Marsh holds controlling interest in Marsh Holdings Group. Bryce shot up, knocking his chair back. You can't be serious. She's not even... Peyton looked him dead in the eye. Not even what? He faltered. Looked to his mother. Renata said nothing, her hand pressed to her forehead, trembling. The lead attorney exhaled hard. We'll have to honor this. Ignoring it opens the company to legal liability. Peyton gathered her papers, calm as still water. I'm not here to take your homes, she said, glancing at the brothers. But this family stops running on your mother's terms. Starting today. Renata's face twisted. You'll regret crossing me. I already regretted staying quiet, Peyton said. Every day for 6 years. She turned and walked out, heels clicking against marble. At the door, Mr. Dalton, the same lawyer who'd read the will, caught her eye. Your father would be proud, he said. She nodded once and stepped into the sunlight. The story hit local news within days. Farmer's secret. Will reveals hidden heir. Renata filed an appeal. It collapsed within a week. The evidence was airtight, notarized, undeniable. One by one, her allies distanced themselves. The court's final ruling gave Peyton full control. The land, the company, every estate her father had built. She went back to the barn that evening, alone. She ran her fingers over the old carved initials, WM plus PM. The wood felt warm under her hand now. Alive. Guess you trusted me the whole time, she whispered. Thunder rolled in the distance. This time, it sounded less like a warning, and more like applause. Weeks passed. Spring rain softened the fields. Grass pushed up through cracked dirt where nothing used to grow. The barn, her father's last gift, once a punishment, now a monument, no longer smelled like a tomb. It smelled like renewal. Peyton spent her mornings fixing it up. New paint on the doors, sunlight pouring through a cleaned-out loft, birds nesting in the rafters again. Every nail she hammered felt like closing a wound she'd carried for years. One afternoon, a car pulled up. Bryce and Colton stepped out. No suits, no smirks, just quiet, tired faces. Colton held out a small box. Inside, their father's pocket watch, polished clean. He told Mom he lost it years ago, Bryce said. Guess he just didn't trust her with it. Peyton turned the watch over in her palm. He trusted time to show the truth, she said softly. They stood there a moment, wind moving through the tall grass, saying nothing else. No apology, no speech, just understanding. Finally, after everything, when their car disappeared over the hill, something in her chest finally eased. That evening, she sat on the barn steps, the same spot where her father used to drink his coffee at sunrise. The watch ticked faintly in her hand, steady as a heartbeat. You didn't leave me a barn, she murmured, watching the sky burn orange over the fields. You left me proof that love outlasts greed. Somewhere, deep down, she swore she could hear him laugh. Warm, proud, and finally free. The barn door creaked once in the wind behind her. It sounded like it was closing on the past, and opening on everything that still had her name on it.